Now, I want us to go through the process of preparing our master layout. In our previous class, we went through the process of using the view map, and I showed you how to create folders. And we said that we'll associate the folders with the various stages of our work. Okay. Now, the layout book, I want us to look at the context of how we do our studio. Okay. Most of the times we ask you for a sheet with a title block. One of the cardinal things that we want in your title block is that it has to be consistent. Okay. So that as much as the content within the sheet changes, depending on what you are doing, the title block remains the same. So what does that mean? There's some information in your project that will always remain constant. A good example is the name of the project, the name of the client, the name of the firm that is designing, or the individual. Okay? Those ones will forever remain consistent. Okay? So you don't need to be doing them every now and then. So that's where the master layout comes in handy. Okay? So the master layout is a layout, it's more or less like a title block. Okay? Where every other thing is anchored on. Okay? So when you have that in mind, then it becomes very easy for you to understand how a layout works. Now, when we talk about title block, what are we looking at? Okay. First of all, we need to appreciate that you'll have various sizes of sheets, right from an A4 times to an A0. Okay. Number two, your sheets will either be oriented in a portrait format or in a landscape format. Number three, you need to come up with your signature design for your title block. Okay, so that the title block that is done by Yuga is very different from the title block done by Moria. If I just look at the work, I just need to know that this work belongs to this person. Okay, so one thing, just like we always insist on in studio, there must be creativity. Okay, so the first step that I want us to do will be to create a master layout. As you have said, we'll have a master layout for A4, A3, A2, A1, A0. Those are 5. Okay, and remember that we'll have them in portrait and in landscape. Is that clear? So what I'm going to do a sample master layout, and then we'll use that master layout to organize our work. I don't know if you have work in this sheet, maybe you don't have, but I want you to see the correlation between how you organize your work in the master layout and how you organize your work in the view map. Is that clear? So how do we create our master layout? You create your master layout by going to the masters. So within the layout book, you have 3 methods of organizing the layout book. You can organize it by subset. Subset is basically equivalent to the folders that you have on our view maps. Okay, you can organize them on master. Maybe I want to see all the work that is done in A3 portrait. Okay, and then you can do it based on current transmitter. So for me, I prefer working with subset. That's the default one. So if you work with subset, you'll have 2 items. In fact, you'll have 1 item, the layout book. Okay, this layout book will have layouts and will have the masters. You'll have a folder called masters. Now within the folder, you'll get where you can create your master layouts. Are you communicating? So for now, I want to create an A3 master layout in landscape format, and then we'll use that A3 to do our work. So how do we create it? You just come and right click under masters, say new master layout, and then choose the size. Okay. By default, you have the list of the various paper sizes. So what you're interested in is an A3 metric, okay? And you want it in landscape. By default, our margins are always 15, okay? And then once you do that, it will show you the printable area, which is basically the size, let's say like length minus the margins, the width minus the margins. Where do you want to place your layout? By default, you place it at the bottom, okay? So let's work up to that point for now. Always remember to name your layout properly. So in my case, it will be Oyuga A3 landscape. Is that clear? Okay. So if I say okay, I want you to look at masters. You will see that a new master layout will be created. And when I open that master layout, you'll see it has a correlation to what I've just put. The size, if I have to measure the size, that I cannot dimension it here, but let's measure it. If I measure the size from there to there, it's 420. From there to there, it's 297, okay? And then we put a margin of 15. So as a result, this one will be 390, okay? And this one will be 267. How to get up to that point? So that's the process of creating your layout, okay? Now, at times you might want to peg the margins of your layout on some predetermined settings, okay? Now, in our case, for example, I can opt to import settings from a printer, okay? And this is usually very important when you're doing printing. When your margins, let me put it this way, once you put your margin and so happens that the net size of your sheet is bigger than the net size of the printer, it will be reduced. It will not always be to scale, okay? All together. When the size of the printer is smaller than the size of your net area, that's okay. But now the question that you'll find that there's a marginal wastage of space, okay? So to avoid that, most of the times, if you can, import the settings from a printer. So for me, I will import from a printer. Now that printer, it might be a physical printer that's already installed in your machine, or it might be a virtual printer in the case of a PDF, okay? So for me, I will work with a virtual printer for a PDF. By default, Microsoft Print to PDF is a default virtual printer. So I'll put it as an A3, okay? And then I'll say, okay, I want you to notice what will happen to our margin settings. Right now, they're at 15, but if I say, okay, they'll all be changed to around 0.08 and 0.13, okay? So again, I want you to check at the margin, the line in blue. Once I say okay, you see it has been changed. So with that, we are able to maximize on our sheet accordingly. Is it clear up to that point? Is it clear up to that point? Now, we have our A3 sheet of paper, just like the A3 sheets of paper that you normally have. The first thing we will always do is to put your boundary, okay? So we'll put a boundary. You normally use which pen to put a boundary? Which pen size? Huh? For your A3 sheets, what pen size did you use? I want us to be as practical as possible. Someone used 0.8. So let's put 0.8. Say okay. And then I'll put it on the edge, though normally we usually leave some space. How much do you usually leave between the margin and your line? The edge of the paper and your line? You leave how much? Yes? 10 millimeters. So I would also want to leave 10 millimeters. So you can see there's a strong correlation between what you do manually and what we are doing here, okay? So what you're just doing is to replicate what you usually do manually, okay? So in that case, you already have the 4 lines. Now, just an issue of architectural diction. At times, always important if those lines, you have strong edges. And just like what you usually do in studio, we always ask you to overlap the line a little bit. I can do that also here by using the double arrowhead, and I use this option and I give it, let's say, even 1 millimeter, and I make sure that it's also a 0.8. I'll want you to look at this corner right now, and if I say okay, what we'll get. So you can see that corner is more or less what we always ask for when you're doing your studio. So as you can see, there's no difference. And a good studio student, if you have learned the art of doing these things on the table, becomes very easy for you to do these things on the master guide. Are you communicating? Now, we have already drawn our boundary. Most of us usually use a band. Maybe just put a band here to write all the details about your studio project. So what's usually the width of that band? Are you communicating? Down here, I usually put a narrow rectangle where you write your name, you write the project, write what's usually the width of that rectangle? Yes? Kindly give me an answer. Huh? Use 20 in an A3 sheet. Okay, let's put a 20. So if I take that and I drag a copy and put 20, there it is. Are we together up to that point? Okay. And I can decide to continue designing. As I said, you must have your own unique. Okay. So some of us will even design the edges. Okay. But for now, for my tutorial, let me just make it as simple as possible. I will want to divide that band into 4. Okay. For the first band, I will put my name and registration number. The second band, I will put the second sub band, I will put the name of the project. The third one, I'll put the name of the task. The fourth one, I'll put the name of the activity. Is that clear? Now, I can put the name of my project here. Let's say, for example, I'm doing a maisonette, or a bungalow proposed bungalow in LR number 2345/56, Juja, Kiambu County. So one thing I would want you to learn is the effect of your font size on your work. Okay? And most of the times for this kind of things, we use font sizes that range from 2.5 to around 5. But I'll always leave it to your discretion. The easiest way about learning font sizes by you doing it, you printing and seeing the repercussion. Is that clear? So in my case, let me assume that I'm using 3. And then there are some settings I want you to go and learn about the text settings. Those I don't need to teach you, you can learn yourself. And then now, there it is. Is that clear? So I can put the information that I know will not change, okay? Like the name of the project, okay? The name of the designer. Maybe it's me who is a student, so it's Oyuga Joseph Otieno. and I have a registration number. So maybe EAAE stroke 2346 stroke 2020. Again, I know that will never change. That's why I'm putting it the master layout. Okay. Now, there are some things that will change. Something like the task. Okay. Now, let's use like what you're using right now in Studio. Right now, we are doing the task on detail, documentation, and modeling. Okay. So my task here will be detail, documentation, and modeling. What does that mean? It means that the next time I'm handling another task, I have to, what am I supposed to do? Huh? You always have to come and change, okay? Now, you'll always find that that process is so mundane, okay? So there's a way of going about it. And one way of going about it is by knowing how you have organized your work, okay? So as I said, in the layout, you will have a subset and you'll have a layout, okay? So we can organize our subset on the tasks. Is that clear? We can organize our layouts on the activities. Are you communicating? Okay. So what we need to do is we need to use what we call the auto text to help us resolve some of those things. So I want us to use the auto text here. So can you let us look at what we are doing? We know very well that our task marking, so maybe I will call it, I'll even write the name task. So I want to put an auto text that will always be associated with the task, okay? And as you have seen, we'll always use the subset. So I will come and look for the auto text, and I'll look for a subset. Where will I get my subset? I'll come to the layout. I have it here. So if I put the subset name there and add, it means that any time I change the name of the subset, that part of my layout will always adjust itself. So going forward, I don't even need to waste time thinking about what is supposed to be there. Together, I just need to change the name of my subset and the sheet will automatically update itself. Now that's the beauty about the information part in building information modeling. Some of these mundane works, the software or the tool does it for you. So you don't need to waste time there, okay? However, there are things that you must be keen about. And the first thing is how you anchor your text. Are you communicating? If I just undo what I've just done, I want you to see what happens to what I've just placed. You can see it's anchored at the center. So what is changing at the edges, okay? But in our case, we'll not want that. For consistency, you'll want that text band to be anchored in a consistent place. So in your case, where will be the best place of anchoring it? Because you have 9 positions. Out of the 9, which dot will be the best? Is it the center one? Is it the top left? Is it the top mid? Is it the top right? Is it the middle? Which one is the best to anchor our text? Yes? Huh? Top right. Let's put a top right and then we see what happens. This is the top right. So if there's a top right, let's just try and change. I'll just type something just for the sake and see what happens. If I say okay, you can see what happens, okay? Though there's another thing that we need to check, the angle, okay? So that anchorage will be always influenced by the angle, okay? So our angle is at 180, from 0 to 180, okay? So that's why the top right will work. But in our case, the default orientation of the text should be 0. So if we say 0 and say okay, you can see what will happen to our text, okay? Simply because it's anchored on the top right. So the ideal one should be top left. Okay, so let me change and do what I've just written. Let me change it to 0, and then I put it to top left. So if I put a top left and then move it where it's supposed to be, it means that whatever name of the subset is, it will start here. Are you together? Going towards the right and going downwards. Is that clear? The concern might only be if the name of the subset is longer than this space. And when it's longer, then you use what you call the wrap text, okay? Or you stretch. If I stretch, the wrap text will be automatically activated. So that if I write, as long as I'm writing, if the wording exits there, it will automatically go down. Is that clear? Okay. So we have put for the task. Let's put for the activity. Now, the activity, let's use what we just marked today. We are doing the blow-up documentation. That's a task. Sindio. The activity will be like doing the plans. Okay? Is that clear? So one of the activities will be like the basement. We'll have a ground floor. We'll have all those things. Okay? Now, how do we relay that one here? We'll come and change the word of task to activity. And we are going to change the outer text from the subset name to the layout name. Remember that we had a subset, and then we have a layout. So if you use the layout and say add, and say OK. So there it is, okay? So with that, I've created my title block, some information that will be consistent to the project. I've put them there, though I can still use the what? The info box and connect with the outer text. Now in an office setup, you'll not want to waste time changing these things. Maybe it's a client, a different project, it's in a different site. So you'll not want to waste time changing these things here. So if you use the outer text and you connect to the project info, then it does the same thing. Is that clear? So with that, I will have finished my title block. Now, the title block, as we said, is just the title block, and you always have to do it for each of the sheets that you have. Are you together? Are you communicating? And I want us to be very clear or thorough on this, okay? If you have 100 sheets, the style of your title will not change. Are you together? It will be there in all your sheets. The only thing is that the content in the sheet will change. And so it's good to look at it that way, okay? So the title block, which is like the motif, must always be done on the master of the associated size, okay? The content within the title block, which is now the actual work that you are doing, must always be organized on a layout. Are you communicating? And in our case, we have a subset and we have a layout. The subset, as we have said, we are using it to show the task, or in an office setup, the workflow stage. And then we have the layout. The layout will show the actual deliverable. Is that clear? So let us do that. Now, I want to put a blow-up of my work. Okay? I want to put a blow-up of my work, one that we've been doing in studio. So I'll come here and I'll create a new subset. Okay? And the new subset, I'll give it the name. Okay? So in our case, it will be blow-up documentation. I'll want you to look at what happens there. You'll see a new thing being created up, and there it is. So we have a subset called blow-up documentation, and you can have subsets within subsets within subsets. Is that clear? Then within that subset, I want to create a layout, and that layout, I want to put my plan. So I'll come and create new layout. Now on the new layout, I will call it basement floor plan. Okay, and the master will be my A3. So if I say okay, it has been created. There it is. Okay, and then if we look at our sheet, as you can see, this information has not changed. This information has not changed. This information mimics what you have written here. Okay, and the activity mimics what you have written there. All together. One thing you'll notice that everything is red. Now that is default. The master layout, anything on the master layout is always shown in red. So that you're able to differentiate the work that you have added on your sheet and what is there in the original master layout. Any question up to that point? Any question? Yes. It's good you're asking that question. Your activities will be done on various scales, okay? So you use the view map and the view set to organize your work based on the scale that's supposed to be done, based on the layers combination that's supposed to be done, based on the pencils that's supposed to be done. You sort out that at the view map. Is that clear? So that now when you bring it here, it's just a question of laying. Is that clear? Okay, so I will want now to lay a drawing. Allow me just to look for a random thing. Now you can lay a document from within your file or from without. It can be a PDF, it can be an image, whatever it is, okay? So for now, allow me just to import something from outside. So how do I do it? I say place drawing. If I place drawing, if I had done work on this file, I will be seeing them on the view map if I've organized them on the view map. Is that clear? But now that I want something that's external, I'll say local file system. I'll browse and I'll look for something that is basically what I'm looking for. Let me look for one in my downloads. Just looking for a random document. I don't know whose work this one is, but let's just pick it and see. So if I say Amos blow up, you can see that's an image, okay? So I can just come and place my image. Is that clear? Okay, allow me to quickly draft something in our worksheet and save it in our view map and place it in our sheet, okay? So let's go to the worksheet. So let me just call it that way. Let's assume that we are doing a blow up of a strip foundation, okay? Our strip foundation, as we did it, at scale 1 to 20, right? And we'll have a number of things. I might not put all of them, but let's just quickly do it in terms of line work. We have a footing. Okay. We have a masonry wall. And remember that basic things as mortar, the mortar bed. should be at 220 or 230. We put 230. Okay. Remember that we had a slab. Right together. And then we have a line to separate our earth from our hardcore. Okay. And then we have a backfill on this side. And using the spline, we have our earth. Let's not forget the mortar. I have to change the pen width a little bit. So let's assume that our strip foundation detail is complete. As you can see, mine is not complete, but it's just for, I'm just showing so that we see the correlation between how you work on your worksheet and how you take it to the lab. Okay, so let's assume that everything is complete. One thing you must always check is that the scale is the right scale. You must check that you're using the right weights. Okay, so once I'm done with that, I will come and save them. On the view map, I will create a folder. In that folder, I will call building element documentation. And within the building element documentation, I will have my strip foundation. Okay. So as you can see, I've already documented my strip foundation. I've confirmed all the basic things in terms of scale, in terms of layers. Layers also make sure that you have put the right clear combination in terms of pen. Okay. Now I want to place it on my layout book. Right together with the deliberate. At the back of my mind, I know that I want to print it. Okay. So let's have that at the back of our mind. So if I come to my layout, I stopped at the blowout documentation. I now need to create a new task for building element documentation. So I'll come my layout because it's a new task. It's not a task within a task. I'll create a new subset there. And I'll call it building element documentation. So if I say create, and within it, I want to create my strip foundation. So I'll come and create a new layout and call it strip foundation. And I'll make sure that the master layout is my A3. So if I say create, if I open that strip foundation, even before I put my work, you'll see that the task and the activity is consistent. What I want to place. Is that clear? So I want to place my strip foundation. I'll just come within this space and right click and say place drawing. As you can see, is the only thing that I've saved on my view map. So I'll get it there as a strip foundation worksheet and say place. And as you can see, it will be placed. So you just need to move it where you want, okay? Now, there are some caveats I want to put with regards to using this layout, okay? And the caveats come in the settings. The first thing that you must always do, you must always make sure that the magnification, that part of your layout must always be 100%. Okay? Never fiddle with that magnification. The moment you fiddle with it, the moment it messes up your one. That's why you need to work backwards, okay? If I'm doing a drawing at scale, maybe I wanted to do it at scale 1 to 10, or I've done it at 1 to 20, I've realized that maybe even 1 to 10 will be better in presenting my work. I will not come here and change the magnification at 200%. I'll go back to the view map. I'll change the settings there, and then come here. Is that clear? I want us to do that with you. So if I say okay, in fact, let me finish first. Number 2 is the title. Okay, we have default titles or title blocks for your layout. Okay, so I want you to learn how to use them. Okay, so for me, I like the default ones because they're automated. You don't waste time trying to correct it. And I'll give you an example. If, for example, I place mine, as you can see, it has all the relevant information that I need. Okay, it has the information of the layout, which is a step foundation. What is the source? It's a worksheet. What's the scale? It's scale 1 to 20. Altogether, automated. I don't need to waste time doing it. Okay. Now, the only thing that I need to do is to maybe adjust the distance, this dimension. Allow me to adjust it to 0. Okay, you can see it will be moved up. Then allow me to move the name, the correct position. So as you can see, I've not wasted so much time in labeling. Are you communicating? Maybe along the way I've realized that, I have an A3 and I was asked for this and I feel the sheet is so empty. There might be need for me to do it in A1. No, in scale 1 to 10. Okay, so I will not come and magnify it, but rather I will go to my source. All together, I will change the scale. Allow me to even dimension first before we change the scale, so that you see the effect. In fact, allow me to put that dimension. Okay, and let's look at our layout based on that. We can see the dimension. So allow me, maybe I've realized I want it at scale 1 to 10. What happens if I just magnify? Because at times it's good to know the repercussions of what you do. If you magnify, it will mean that everything on that sheet will be magnified. Okay, so if I say like 1 to 10, which is 200%, if I say okay, it means everything in that sheet will be magnified, of which you will not have control. Okay, for example, if this was 2.5, now it will be 5 millimeters. When you print, it will be so big. Is that clear? So instead of doing that, all what you need to do is to go to your source, change the scale there, so that, as you can see, if I put 1 to 100, what happens? But I need at 1 to 10, so that I'm not able to lose, especially the scale and proportion of labels and of dimensions and of text. Is that clear? So once I do that, I will still come here and save. And this time around, I can deliberately call it strip foundation. At 1 to 10. Okay. So if I say create, a new view set will be created. Okay. Let's go back to our layout. Now, I want to place a 1 to 10. Okay. So I'll just right click and then say place drawing. And now I'll come and place the view set that reflects my scale 1 to 10. And if I say okay, you'll notice that in terms of size, in terms of drawing, there's no difference between this that you have done at scale 1 to 10 and not magnified, and this that you have done at scale 1 to 20 and magnified by 1 to 10. Are you communicating? But now when it comes to issues like text, you find that these ones will be so magnified and you lose control in terms of scale and proportion. And text should not screen. Is that clear? So that's why you always have to use the 100% magnification. So in my case, this will be the right drawing. So I'll just come and place it. Another thing I need to show you with regards to the settings of the drawing. One is the update type. You always strive to make it auto so that it automatically updates itself. If you don't do that, you have to manually do it. Okay? And if you forget to do it, it will just not update itself. Okay? The other thing is that you strive to store the drawing into the project file. If I remove that tick and you send me the work, the drawing will come as an empty drawing. Is that clear? So make sure that all drawings are stored into the project file. And with that, we are done with the process of using the layout. Any question? Any question? Now, when you know how to use the layout, one of the deliverables that I expect from you at least is a PDF. Okay? So I want to take you through the process of converting that layout into a PDF. Though later we'll learn how to use the publisher to do a lot of other things. But for now, I want you to learn how to do a PDF, because I will expect you now going forward to give me a hard copy of the work that you have done. So if I want to print that work, I just do, there are two ways, okay? I can file save as. For the ones who know shortcuts, is Control-Shift-S, but you go file save as, and the file save as, use the save as type as PDF, okay? It's in your best interest to open it to see beforehand, before sending, how it looks like. You must look at the page options. For me, remember that the settings of my layout were pegged on a virtual printer. Okay, so that virtual printer is what is being used here. Okay, and as you can see, everything is consistent to it. And then drawing option. Now you have an option of printing the entire layout. I just have, let's say, I have a number, though they are blank. So I have an option of using printing the entire layout, everything, or just printing what you want, what you have selected. So for me, I will print selected, okay? And you have other things. If you want to put a header or footer, if you want to use hairline, which is not advisable, just use hairline if you know your pen weights are not correct. You want it in color or in black and white or in grayscale? I won't mind color. Do I need to put other settings, especially when it comes to issues of passwords? Do I need to allow to print? So all those settings you need to explore and see what are the repercussions of saying yes or no in some of those settings, okay? So once I put the settings okay, I will say, okay. Then I will give the name of my sheet. Maybe it's Oyuga. I might want to use the task marking, so building element, or I'll use the short form, building element documentation. And then I will call it strip foundation. Okay. Now, if I say save, I need to know where I've saved it. Okay. And this is always a problem with most of us. You must know where you are saving your work so that at the end of the day, you don't lose it. Okay. So in my case, let me just use resources. Allow me to save it here. So if I say save, and I've said open file after save, if I say okay or save, my file will be open. Are you communicating? And as you can see, it is very similar to what I had on my layout. Okay. Remember, we used a 0.8 pen, so you can see how thick the boundaries are. So you must always be very sure of the pens that you use. Any question up to that point? What I'm noticing is that my pens, everything is 0.2 because of the adjustment that I did on my drawing. So I might want to change that one. You can see I put everything at scale. Oh, it should be at scale 1 to 20. However, in my layout, something happened. my pens. As you can see, my pens got adjusted, so you must always check your pens also. So I need the pens at scale 1 to 20. If I say okay, they should change. If you can see, they're changing. If I should be 1 to 10, that I don't have a pen set of 1 to 10. Okay, but you can see there's some difference. Are you communicating? Now allow me to PDF the same layout. I always advise you not to overwrite a file, okay? You might need it later. So I will save. So I want you to look at the difference. You can see here the pen weight can be seen, okay? You cannot compare it with this one where everything was at 0. Is that clear? Any question up to that point? Any question up to that point?